Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Thursday's edition, Thanksgiving Day edition of Alaska Weather on the 25th day of November, 2021. I'm David Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show. Up first graphic, up there around St. Lawrence Island, we still got the cold north winds blowing, so heavy freezing spray at Savunga, and that's pattern expected to continue through Friday, and that's specifically along the north shore of St. Lawrence Island, especially Savunga, and north winds 25 to 40 miles an hour, temperatures in the teens. Of course, that will cause elevated surf, but nothing too serious, and more importantly, the freezing spray will blow inland and freeze on objects such as power lines, possibly breaking them, hopefully not though. And that, again, that condition will last through Friday. Moving on to the hazardous weather graphics. Let's see, we've got a wind chill advisory out there for the eastern North Slope, Brooks Range area. And that's through 3 p.m. Friday for wind chills to 50 degrees below zero. And that includes the areas Galbraith Lake, Franklin Bluff, Sagwan, and those areas there, just north of Arctic Village, not included. And then down to the south, also a wind chill advisory through midnight tonight for wind chills to 45 degrees below zero there, the greater Fairbanks area into the Yukon Flats. And that's mostly for the summits along the, along the Steese Highway. And that's north of Fox. So that's specifically where the wind chill advisory is out for, but it includes the Fairbanks area there. And that's out again until midnight tonight. And then over to the west there, winter weather advisory, St. Lawrence Island through noon Friday. And due to blowing snow and the gusty winds, and that'll reduce visibilities away from the coastline, they're down to a half mile or less. And then, let's see, south central or the Kenai Peninsula, that's winter weather advisory due to end down around Anchor Point and down around the Homer Bluffs area, Clam Gulch, looking for several inches of snow. Gusty winds 35 miles an hour reported at Homer. That's going to reduce visibilities down to a half mile or less with the new snow of 1 to 3 inches has fallen there and in areas, but that's only out until 6 p.m. this evening, so I didn't highlight it, but thought I'd mention it. And then off to the east there, eastern North Gulf Coast, Yakutat, winter weather advisory later tonight through Friday, and looking for 7 to 10 inches of snow there in the Yakutat area. And then up around Haines there, the red area, that's the winter storm warning for heavy snow, and that's out until 9 p.m. this evening. And total accumulations anywhere from 6 to 12 inches expected there. Could pick up another 2 to 4 inches until 9 p.m. this evening there. But again, conditions will improve or snowfall will lessen up after 9 p.m. this evening, or they'll kick it out longer if it doesn't the morning. Anyway, and then down to the south, winter weather advisory for the Juneau area, and that's out until, or actually that kicks in at midnight tonight and stays through Friday night, and you can pick up 5 to 10 inches of snow in the greater Juneau area there. During that time, again, from about midnight tonight, that's when the temperatures are expected to fall low enough there for the rain to change over to snow. Picked up about 3/4 of an inch of rain in the last 12 hours in the Juneau area. So if that had fallen as snow, you'd been looking at 7 to 9 inches of snow. But expecting to pick up about 5 to 10 inches of snow in that area tonight as soon as the temperatures get cold enough for it to fall as snow. And from there, moving on to satellite imagery. We've got, you can see all the moisture rolling into the southeast coast there, and lower top clouds, the colder air about to come in just to the west and southwest there, and that's sweeping across Kodiak Island. Clear over Kodiak Island, gusty winds anywhere from, 40 to 50 miles per hour in gusts there across the island there today, or actually 45 to 55 miles an hour, clearing it out there with the cold temperatures back in, pulling the cold air southeastward from the northwest, and even stronger winds there across the Kamishak Bay. Augustine Island seeing gusts to 60 miles an hour out of the west. Homer, as I mentioned, 35 miles an hour blowing across the bay there. Picks up moisture and light snow falling across Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, up into the Anchorage area, and to a lesser extent farther to the north. And then some areas of light snow actually all the way from the North Gulf Coast all the way to the eastern Arctic coast today, but nothing too terribly heavy. Homer did pick up, again, 1 to 3 inches down in that area, and picking about an inch in the Anchorage area today. Of course, maybe a little more up along the hillside. And out to the west, distinct lack of storminess out over the Bering Sea, and just a weak front there south of the Aleutians. That's not really strong at all, kind of just a band of broken clouds up there, kind of shredded a little bit there southwest of Adak, and just kind of a cold Arctic air mass and high pressure over the Bering Sea. Snow showers, a couple inches falling along the Alaska Peninsula there, northwest winds gusting 30 to 40 miles an hour, and starting to diminish, especially over the Fox Islands. But you can see a widespread area of low clouds with the cold Arctic air from the Bering Strait southward there to just north of the Pribilofs. Areas of light snow in that, lower flying conditions there. And that's not going to change a whole lot over the next couple of days, although a stronger front, that front will probably, or another one will come in and pick the winds up, and probably looking at some gale force winds eventually coming into the Aleutians over the next day or so, but won't be pushing too far to the east. Otherwise, again, southwest flow to continue at least for the next couple of days into the Panhandle, keeping it precipitation falling in one form or the other there for the next 2 days. Still a wet weather pattern that's going to continue. And again, the strong northwest winds, drier, colder air in across Kodiak Island, spreading out over the Gulf of Alaska, then curving back around, getting south to north flow, upper level low kind of just wobbling around southern Alaska there, kind of might lift a little farther to the north, set up more over the interior than over the southern Kenai Peninsula where it is today. So not a big change in the overall pattern across the state expected for the next 3 or 4 days or so. On the chart today, you can see areas of snow from the Gulf of Alaska all the way up into the eastern Arctic coast, pretty light up in that area. Areas of blowing snow, higher elevations, summits there through the eastern interior. Strongest winds up over the western Brooks Range, Howard Pass, or the passes through the Brooks Range. Howard Pass notably had a wind chill of 74 degrees below zero, with winds gusting to 65 miles an hour to the north, and the temperature right around 30 degrees below zero, and 30 to 50 degree below wind chills through the Brooks Range, and the advisory over the eastern areas tonight into tomorrow. Otherwise, just weak impulses dropping southward from the Arctic there in the Chukchi Sea, bringing the gusty winds, light snow to the St. Lawrence Island area, all the way down to the Alaska Peninsula. And for the outlook tonight, not much change for the Panhandle. The heavier snow will let up over the northern areas, but pick up as the colder air moves in over the Juneau area. There'll be kind of a mix of conditions down to the south, depending on your elevation. And not much change. Low pressure shifts eastward a little bit there now south at Cordova. And the winds, northwest winds, should diminish Kamishak Bay slowly, Kodiak Island. And the snow starts to taper off Cook Inlet, south central Alaska, probably after midnight tonight, but still an area of snow over the eastern half of the state from the North Gulf Coast to the eastern Arctic coast. Higher pressure, cold temperatures, below zero temperatures over the western part of the state, and high pressure over the eastern Bering Sea of Arctic nature. So snowfall levels still down to sea level there with the ever-expanding sea ice along the west coast and up around St. Lawrence Island. And for Friday, finally a stronger front pushes in across the western Aleutians late Thursday night, and Friday that tightens the gradient up over the central Aleutians, west central Aleutians, and over the western Bering Sea. But to the east, winds will be light under Arctic high pressure, and western interior again, not much change. Mostly clear, dry, very cold, and cold and snowy over the eastern part of the state from the North Gulf Coast all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast. And again, lighter precipitation amounts and for the day Friday for the Panhandle, but still got southwest flow, still a wet weather pattern with low pressure in the Gulf. Moving on to Saturday, Another low rolls up off the south coast there, so look for increasing wind and rain and warmer temperatures ahead of that front, pushing the snowfall levels back up above sea level, but not so on the north. That'll actually start to draw colder air in from the Yukon there with the falling pressures on the south coast there, so increasing chances of snow from Juneau on up to Haines, once again Skagway, and less of a snow chance, but still periods of light snow from the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound. Generally dry for Cook Inlet. Southern Cook Inlet overwater trajectory, picking up some light snow showers there, and then kind of maybe clipping Seldovia, possibly Homer, but those amounts will be quite light. And snow shower central interior, areas of light snow from the Brooks Range on out to the eastern central Arctic coast, but still dry and cold over the western part of the state. And light snow continues, but those winds will be much lighter for St. Lawrence Island, and light winds across all the central and eastern Bering Sea and even the Alaska Peninsula. Lows tonight, upper 20s for the Panhandle.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Graphic Friday morning, IFR North Slope, Arctic coast, and marginal VFR down across all of the eastern interior into an area of IFR along the North Gulf Coast, including the Kenai Peninsula and Turnagain Arm, Prince William Sound eastward to Yakutat, and a band of IFR, eastern panhandle, otherwise marginal VFR from the coast there out across Gulf of Alaska to Fognak Island, Kodiak Island, VFR, and some VFR across southwest interior, Bristol Bay, up across Seward Peninsula, into the Noatak Valley and eastward to the Koyukuk Valley, Bering Sea and Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, all marginal VFR. And for the afternoon, northwest coast, Noatak Valley, DeLong Mountains, mostly VFR, but IFR, central eastern north slope, and actually south of the Brooks Range there into the northern Yukon Flats, and along the Porcupine River, at least the northern part. And then marginal VFR again, eastern central interior, all the way down into IFR there along the North Gulf Coast, southern Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound, Yakutat, marginal for the Panhandle, Gulf of Alaska, and some marginal VFR due to cold outflow there for Cook Inlet, across Kamishak Bay and Fognak Island, the Barren Islands, VFR, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, and the Western Alaska Range, Kuskokwim Valley, all the way out to the coastline. And for the Bering Sea and Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, marginal VFR, with IFR now over the Western Aleutians to Amchitka Island, back to Shimianatu, and probably the Komodorskis. For the morning Saturday, band IFR out over the Western Aleutians, Southwest Bering with frontal system there. Marginal VFR for the remainder of the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, northward to the Bering Strait, eastern central Norton Sound to Kotzebue, Selawik Valley, much of the central northern interior all the way out to the Arctic coast, marginal VFR with IFR along the Brooks Range on out to the eastern Arctic coast. IFR from northeast Prince William Sound and into the coast range there, eastward to Yakutat, marginal VFR for the Panhandle, Gulf of Alaska, Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, part of Kachemak Bay, and Seldovia, down and across northern Kodiak Island. And for the afternoon, Kodiak Island, VFR, Bristol Bay, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, Kuskokwim Valley, eastward across the western Alaska Range, Susitna Valley, and most of the Manduska Valley look to be VFR. Southern Cook Inlet, marginal, Kenai Peninsula, marginal, IFR back into Prince William Sound, and IFR over the southern Panhandle, western central Aleutians, as well as the North Slope and eastern Arctic coast. Enitovik, marginal VFR tomorrow, and then Adigan looks more IFR-ish, and then for Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, especially in the afternoon for both passes, either entrance, VFR for rainy, windy, marginal VFR, maybe trending towards some VFR conditions in the afternoon, possibly, and Isabel, marginal VFR, and looks marginal from Intesta the entire day, Tanita, marginal VFR, and for Portage, IFR maybe on the eastern entrance, otherwise marginal VFR, not too bad. Marginal conditions also for Chilkoot and White. Freezing level, not a lot to look at here, 2,000 feet, well south of the Aleutians and well south of even Dixon Entrance there at the surface, just along the western Panhandle. Otherwise, just north of the Fox Islands and cutting across southern Bering Sea. Icing, Areas of isolated moderate rime icing there, or maybe even mixed, for the southeast coast and the eastern North Gulf Coast westward into Prince William Sound. And then some scattered areas there for the Alaska Peninsula and over the Bering Sea. A little more solid area of isolated moderate icing there for the central and especially the western Aleutians. Otherwise, icing free over the interior from Kodiak Island up to the Arctic coast. Jet stream, west-northwest flow, about 65 to 70 knots there from the northern Bering Sea, St. Matthew Island, down across Bristol Bay, just south of Kodiak Island, and then turns west-southwest and increases 115 to 125 knots across the southern panhandle. And for 9,000 feet, higher pressure over the Bering Sea and lower pressure over the interior, so northwest winds 40 to 45 knots there in Nunivak Island across the Alaska Peninsula, turn west-southwest 40 to 50 knots into the panhandle. And at 3,000 feet, 35 to 40 knot west-southwesterlies, Gulf of Alaska, kind of die over the southeast coast. And taking a look at turbulence, moderate chop, considerable moderate chop, Kodiak Island, the Aleutian Range, north and south part of the panhandle, and up along the western Brooks Range.
Happy Thanksgiving, stargazers. The summer stars are retreating behind the sun as the winter stars enter the game. Find a big open area so you can see both sides of the sky, and at 9:30, look west for the summer triangle asterism. As a reminder, those stars are in order of brightness: Vega, Altair, and Deneb. And each night, these stars will set earlier and earlier, eventually dipping too low in late December. Now, turn around. In the east, you'll find one of the easiest constellations to spot, Orion the Hunter. With his 3 distinctive stars in a row, he's charging upward into the sky and into winter. The belt is definitely cool, but the brighter stars in Orion are great to check out too. The blue giant is called Rigel, and the redder star to the left, that is Betelgeuse. Enjoy your holiday meal and keep looking up.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and we have a special guest in the studio today. We welcome Amanda Terborg of the Aviation Weather Center. Thanks for joining us, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Amanda's flown in all the way from Kansas City, and for those of you that don't know, the Aviation Weather Center serves the lower 48 for aviators, just as the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit here in Anchorage serves all of Alaska. So I kind of wonder, what's the Aviation Weather Center in Kansas City doing to help out Alaska, Amanda?
Yeah, you know, we do a lot of collaboration work with our sister station up here. Lately, we've been doing a lot of work, especially in the satellite meteorology.
Okay.
In particular, we have been looking at ways to better identify icing conditions in clouds, which is a big deal up here because, as I'm coming to find out, even though I'm not from here, you guys have a lot of pilots here.
You have a lot of pilots. In fact, when you say you can't get there from here, that's how you get there.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so with icing potential then, what's Kansas City working on?
Well, we are working on something that will help us, again, identify the icing in the clouds. You don't want ice on your aircraft.
No.
Not only does it add a whole bunch of extra weight to your airframe when it attaches to the wings and the nose cone, but it can also mess with your aerodynamics.
Right.
And in the most serious conditions, that can mess with it enough that you can actually crash.
It changes the shape of the wing, and that makes it sometimes impossible to fly, right?
It does, yeah. So we want to figure out a way to better forecast for that.
Makes sense.
Now this particular image is over Alaska. The colors here are a little goofy. It doesn't look like your run-of-the-mill satellite image.
Okay.
But the red is where you have liquid clouds and the blue is ice. But again, it really doesn't tell you a lot where you have icing conditions in that cloud. Because in those clouds there's little droplets and they're cold and they're actually below freezing, but they're still liquid. And that makes them sticky.
Okay.
So when an aircraft flies through there, those droplets are sticking to the aircraft and it can happen amazingly fast.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to find. And there is a product called the Aircraft Flight Icing Threat that does this. And it's basically looking at the temperature of the cloud, and it's also looking at the size of the droplets to identify a probability and intensity of those icing conditions.
Okay.
And if you flip to the next image, this is a case from Juneau, Alaska, where this probably wouldn't have been the best day to fly around Juneau.
Okay.
Now there was an area of moisture that pushed south from the southwest up along the coast that pushed in a stratus layer. And in the stratus layer there was a lot of those super cooled liquid drops or a lot of stickiness.
Okay.
And So the flight icing threat was able to, in the pinks and the reds there, was able to identify where that icing was. Now this is really cool. You know, it's really cool to be able to identify that. There is, you know, of course, caveats to every product. Much as we wish it would happen, sun doesn't shine all the time, unless, I guess, if you live in northern Alaska during the summertime.
Right.
But we need that sun to be able to bounce off those clouds and to be able to see where those super cool drops are.
Okay, so it's a daytime only tool.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, of course, you know, we're in the era of advanced satellite technology, and there is a satellite that can actually use moonlight to see clouds.
Yes.
And so sometime in the future, we hope to be able to do that.
Okay.
Another thing that is a bit of a challenge is multiple layers of clouds. You know, you can only see so far through a thick cloud.
Okay.
And if it's thick enough, sometimes you can't see a layer of icing that's below there.
Right.
But even besides those caveats, this product has a lot of potential to help out Alaskan aviators here.
Well, it sounds like a really big deal, and something that forecasters at the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit could use probably on a daily basis, and especially in the middle of a really big storm.
Yeah, I would think so.
Do you have a really good success story in the lower 48 using this tool?
You know, it's a fairly new product, and so we're still evaluating it. But yeah, we've had a lot of cases where we have seen that it does tend to capture those icing conditions.
Okay, very good. Well, Amanda, thanks so much for sharing some of the very interesting satellite imagery and the tools that you're using there at the Aviation Weather Center in Kansas City with us here in Alaska. People can probably find some of this information online, right?
Yeah, here is a website here. It's a page from NASA Langley, and they have this imagery as well as a bunch of other satellite imagery that you can take a look at.
Okay, great. And I'm sure our friends at the Alaska Aviation Weather Center and the unit will be using that in the coming months there with your training and your help there to learn more about that tool to help Alaska aviators any day of the year. That's wonderful stuff. So thanks again for joining us, Amanda, and we welcome you to view any of our Alaska weather facts on YouTube anytime at the address below, and we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis, still expanding westward there towards St. Lawrence Island and also southward there from the south coast of the island there and all the way down into Bristol Bay, and this is significantly more than the last several years. In fact, this is the most sea ice out in the Bering Sea since 2012, since November 2012, and sea ice continuing to grow in Cook Inlet, and this is going to continue for probably the next 4 or 5 days to expand westward and southward, maybe 30 nautical miles or so. And for the coastal water forecasts, small craft advisories along the coast, southwest winds 25 knots, seas around 17 feet. For Lynn Canal, south winds at 30 knots with 6-foot seas. And Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, central southern inner channels, looking at a 20-knot wind on average from the south with 4 to 8-foot seas. And for Saturday, Lynn Canal, north winds 25 knots, small craft advisories there. Lighter northeast breeze at 15 for Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, south winds 20 knots, seas 6 feet. And then for along the coast, Prince of Wales Island, extreme south coast of the Panhandle, small craft advisories, west winds 30 knots with 11-foot seas. And then the other side of the low center there, winds will be east at 25 knots with 10-foot seas. And then as you head up the coastline, winds will be west-northwest, 20 to 25 knots with 8-foot seas. Prince William Sound for Friday. Northwesterlies 25 knots, seas at 6 feet. In northern Cook Inlet, north winds 15 knots with 3-foot seas. 25-knot north wind, small craft advisory south of the Forelands, seas 6 feet. And high-end gales there for Kamishak Bay. Another windy day, maybe not quite as high as today with the 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts they had at Augustine Island, but still pretty stiff out of the west at 45 knots, seas around 20 feet. Gales also for the Barren Islands, west winds 40 knots. 14-foot seas, and small craft advisories for the North Gulf Coast, west winds 30 knots, and small craft advisories for Prince William Sound, northwest 25 knots, seas 6 feet. And for Saturday, for northern Cook Inlet, north winds at 10 knots, otherwise northerlies at 20 knots, southern Cook Inlet. Gale warnings for the Kamishak Bay, westerlies 35 knots, winds coming down to 30 knots out of the west for the Barren Islands, and 25-knot winds from, on average, a westerly direction there, at least a westerly component to the direction for the North Gulf Coast. and light northeast winds at 15 knots for Prince William Sound. Kodiak Island, gale warnings, west 35 knots, seas 8 to 12 feet. Alaska Peninsula, lighter winds out that way, northwest 20 on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, Pacific side north at 15, and small craft advisories for Bristol Bay, northwest at 25 knots. And for Saturday, Kodiak Island, small craft advisories, westerlies 25 to 30 knots, Bristol Bay down to north at 15, and small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula, north to northwest, 25 knots. Central western Aleutians, pretty uniform. Southeast, 25 to 30 knots, seas running 6 to 12 feet. Lighter winds, Zunimac Island, 15 to 20 knots out of the east. And for Unalaska Island, variable, 10 to 15 knots, seas 4 feet. Outlook for Saturday, eastern Aleutians, small craft advisories, winds east to northeast, 25 to 35 knots. Gale warnings from Atka Island westward Shimia, east winds at 40 knots. Southwest coast, north to northwest, 20 knots, seas 4 feet. Light variable winds tomorrow for the Pribilof, seas down to 3 feet. Northeast 20 for St. Matthew Island. Small craft advisory, St. Lawrence Island for northerlies at 30 knots. Those come down to 25 knots from the north for St. Lawrence Island, St. Matthew Island, as well as the Kuskokwim Delta Coast, Yukon Delta Coast, northeast at 20, Pribilofs northeast 15. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, actually the entire stretch of the coastline up there will be north to northeast at 15 knots. Brisk wind advisories from Cape Beaufort to Wales, north 25 to 30 knots. And the outlook for Saturday, Wales up to Cape Beaufort's brisk wind advisories continue north to northeasterlies 25 knots. Otherwise, 10 to 20 knot winds from the north on average for the Arctic coast. For tonight, areas of light snow from the eastern Arctic coast southward all the way into the Gulf of Alaska with a winter storm warning until 9 p.m. for the Haines area. Looking for 6 to 10 inches total there. Otherwise, rain or snow continues for the Panhandle and breezy conditions. Less wind and less snow for the Alaska Peninsula. And quite widespread area, light snow, low clouds over the northern Bering Sea into the Bering Strait.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.